Good morning to all of you. I would like to have a happy start by making two key announcements, if I am allowed to do so. First and foremost, Research and Ranking, our dear organization, completed or rather achieved a milestone of 10,000 subscribers last month. So as the year unfolded, as a new decade unfolded, we were very, very happy, and we thought it should be the right podium for us to share this excitement and joy of having reached where we have. So that's about 10,000 subscribers, long way to go. But this ecosystem of people who are sitting here is now a large community and fraternity of 10,000 people. Thank you so much for what you have done for us. Thank you so much for being a part right from the inception. And thank you so much for taking us to this milestone. And we look forward to your support as we go ahead in this journey. The second important aspect, which I think you must all as a part of our system should know, is that our colleague Harsh, are you here, Harsh? Okay, please stand up if you can. Yeah, that's right behind. So Harsh wrote a very interesting article on the analysis of budget, which incidentally was picked up by the IIPA, and it's a government journal that comes out, which talks about different analysis of the economy. And his article came out in a very, very prominent section. I would request all of you all to please have a look at it, read it. I'm sure there's a lot to gain from that. So those are the two small announcements. Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. And we are all currently, as we know, there are different views about the economy that's coming in from different quarters, and they don't seem to be as sunny as our fine Saturday noon is today. This fine Saturday morning, bright and sunny, but largely the discussions around the economy is more of overcast, shadowed, a little dark, if I may say so. So there are contrasting views. And most of us who are in this room, as a matter of fact, most of us who are professionals in the marketplace, we are having a lot of contrasting views coming in from the market. And this, which is leading to a state of confusion. And this state of confusion largely originates from contrasting consumptions of different sources that we get from. And I think we are fortunate to be in a country like India, because these contrasting viewpoints are coming in from very rich minds, experienced people, and these are things which cannot be ignored. And we cannot perhaps just shy it away by saying that nahi, uska view galat hai. So instead, we have taken into account those, all those consumptions. And if I have to be in the absence of a very, very deep level research, I think there are various logical reasons for one to be fairly circumspective in today's state of affairs. What we thought at Research and Ranking is it may be a good idea for us to actually revisit the facts, go back to the drawing board and see what lies in store for us. And this has particular influence today for the fact that we have just entered into a new decade. A new decade is all about new energies, it's about new vision, and it's also about reflecting back to the previous decade and seeing what did we learn from there. What are those learnings that we are gathering? What are those assimilation of facts that we want to bring in? And design a strategy which will be for the next decade. So we thought it's an important time for us to relook at what we have been looking at as our core philosophy. And what better podium than this to share all those facts and data points? It's slightly data heavy. Bear with us. I presume you would enjoy. I should also put up a very, very dispassionate fact, about our company. It is very important for me to state that when we have done this exercise, it has been largely technical in nature. It has been exceptionally clinical in its conduct. We do not follow any political ideology. We do not have any leanings towards any side. Our commitment lies solely with our subscribers, with our investors. So anything that you see from us is notwithstanding any government that comes here. Okay, it is about what all of us are about. It is what India is all about. So those are the aspects that we have taken into consideration. We have tried to put together a few things. So when we went this, normally what happens is when you get into investigation or an investigative state of mind, one of the first design principles that is generally followed is to understand, are there certain patterns that you can look at? So one of the core things that we decided was to first go back and see if you have to split the Indian story over the last 30 years, this liberalization era of 90s, the 2000 era, and the 2010 to 2010 to 2020. So when we looked at that, we said, can we go back and see if there are some patterns, and bingo. When we went out searching for it, we could see starking patterns that emerged from this entire exercise. So the first part of it is to share with you what are the patterns that we saw when we did this exercise. So, some terms that we looked at, in our normal life, we have always seen ICU, detoxification, deoxygenization, and these have been healthcare terms. But, as different similes, it has been used for representations in the media by very wise people. And as I said, we have strong reasons to listen to them and understand what their perspective are. We have always believed when you look at data and when you look at the economic situation of any country or any economy, as a matter of fact, it's very important to see which lens are you looking at it from, which angle are you looking at it from, And as Manish said, is it a journey of, are we talking about money making? Are we talking about wealth creation? Is it long term? Is it short term? Is it mid term? Those are all attributes that come into picture. So we understand where they are coming from. We understand their statements have a lot of value. However, we wanted to go beyond these statements and see, are there certain parameters which were similar to what we saw in the marketplace earlier? So, what's happening currently? We have a GDP challenge, okay? There is a challenge of slowdown. There is a challenge of auto sector, which has been widely circulated in the media, okay? Consumption definitely has slowed down. These are all, as it stands, what we are hearing on a daily basis. Perhaps true, perhaps needs a different angle to look at as well. So, what came out as a similarity was the decade of 2000 and the start of 2000. 2000, 2003, when you look at the markets, how many of you have been in the markets at that time? 2000, Sir has been here. Anybody else? Okay, very small minority. I'm sure the ones who have been in that market will understand and refer better, okay? However, for the ones who have not been there, it is more important for you all to have a perspective about what happened in the market at that time. So, we saw a market which was at 5,900, plummeting to 2,600 in a period of 6 months. Mind you, from Feb to September, this is what happened. The markets sort of crashed. So much of wealth was eroded, so much of mayhem, down spirits. And mind you, today the equity markets are far more matured to factor in a lot of changes. And we are talking about 2002, which, if I have to put my neck out and say, only the wisest people transacted at that time because they could understand the concept of wealth creation. And they were, by the sheer nature of our society, very few people. It's a sheer representation in this room. Very few people who have been in the market at that time. So, we saw this great plummet that happened at that time. What happened next? In 2003, the government came up with a budget with most of us, and when you go back, you will see that laid the structural foundation of a major event that happened subsequently. So in 2003, you got a budget which had major focus on infrastructure. What they decided was that India has to grow, infrastructure is the way to go. So infra was a major focus. There was a major reduction on the excise duty, especially on consumer durables. The idea was spend, invest, improve your lifestyle, and increase the consumption. Increase the standard deduction. The standard deduction in the income tax rules, there was a change for the first time there. And the whole idea was to put more money into the consumer's hand so that it can fuel the economy better. And disinvestment became a major agenda for the government, something which India never looked at as a source of wealth creation. And it happened that disinvestment became a primary target of that government. And a very, very big reform came in, which ultimately triggered the market, and you will see that in the future. The long-term capital gain, was removed from there. And that also made equity markets as a completely new, asset class for people to look at from a long-term basis. And it is important to say, when you look at the market, and Sir and others would agree, at that time the concept of long-term was not as prevalent. Equity markets were more a trading source. So when you compare that to what has happened in 2020, I know that there's been a lot of news in the market, there have been a lot of WhatsApp forwards, but there are 2-3 sections of the society who do this, right? And with due respect to all of them, we cannot find a budget which is equally good for everyone. So when we look at it, the budget analysis, it is more from how is it good for India, then how is it good for the stock market investors, and how is it good for us as individuals? Because the whole idea is we are a subset of what our country is. The country and then the stock market is a subset of how the economy is, and we as individuals are a subset of what this overall country, economy, and we as people are. So there has been some concrete steps on 5 trillion. There has been a lot of jokes going around, and they are good jokes to laugh too. However, when you look at some of the data points when you go forward, similarity, infrastructure, key push, when you look at infrastructure, despite the fiscal deficit that we have had this year, the government is committed for a 1.3 trillion rupee investment in the infrastructure space, identified 6,500 projects, and those projects will be executed through the infra push. And this is despite the fiscal deficit. They could have taken a shorter route by saying we want to reduce that. Instead, it's been a bold move, which we believe is the way to look at it. For the first time, we have had a flexi option. We have had happy hours. We have had, so many other flexible options of paying EMIs. For the first time, we have a flexible option of tax payouts, which also has a core objective of putting more money into the consumer's hands. FPI, so the corporate bonds where there was a limit of 9% has now become 15%, which in itself become a major boost for the economy. And there's a 100% tax exemption on wealth funds which are in the priority sectors, which again was not the case until last year. And the removal of dividend distribution tax, though I must say here it gets taxed at the receiver's end. So if you have to put it up on a snapshot, this is the similarity that we are talking about. You look at what has happened in 2003, you look at what has happened in 2020. Infra, putting more money into the customer's hand. You have reductions which has come in the GST rates. There's a disinvestment target. It's now a targeted effort, disinvestment. Okay, including talking about listing LIC. How they do it, what will be the structure is a matter I'm sure they will have to structure that out. But including that, has been put up here. And there's a 100% tax exemption on sovereign wealth funds. So there are some similarities that you see between 2003 and 2020. So what does it tell us? Now, what happened after that? In that 2003 phase, going back to 2003, you see how the automobile sales have plummeted. You can see the red circles, in 2000, and you can see how it has again plummeted here. So one thing that has actually impacted everyone is the auto sales. But what you also have to see is how the automobile sector went up, in the forward years. The automobile sectors actually rallied, and quite a lot of us, as a matter of fact, in this phase have bought our cars, have made a lot of money in the stock market on auto stocks, isn't it? So that was a state in 2003. Jo hum aaj baat kar rahe hain about automobile is what people used to say that in 2002 and 2003. And today, we see a similar condition, economic condition on the automobile sector. That said, GDP growth. You look at where we were, from a 1.4, again we have hit back to the prime of 11.4 to reaching to 4.5. And today, if you look at 2003, again we were in that 4.3 zone. The GDP in 2003 was in that 4.4 zone, and today we are at 4.5 zone. What is, again, the point again being re-emphasized is, what are we talking about the similarity of 2003 and 2020? You look at the decline in EPS as a contribution to the stock market. You see how 2003 has been 2.8%, and again, back here, we are at 2.8. Once again, a very, very clear similarity, and you can look at the other numbers, they don't stand out there. 2003 stands out with 2020. Declining interest rates. Again, if you look at 2003, you can see you have been in that declining zone, goes from 9, 8, 7, landing up to about 6. And If you look at 2020, again you see 6 moving on to 6.25, then coming down to 5.15. So there's a declining interest rate regime that is, up for the taking. The idea is to compare 2003 to 2020, and we are not picking up 2003 out of any love and affection. It is because 2020 and 2003 are showing starking similarities, which has a lot of inward details for us to consider. What happened next? What happened in 2003 post-budget? Okay, if you look at it, this is what the market is. You saw from 2003 to 2008 how the markets rallied from 6,100, the Sensex, to 21,000. And this is the time when a lot of neo-millionaires were created. This is the time when most of the wise men who were in that market in early 2000s, okay, made the maximum money that happened in that time. So 2003 to 2008, seeing 6,001 to 21,000 is an outcome of, we believe, the structural foundation that was laid out of a budget in 2003. And that's one of the reasons the markets were propelled to go this high. They say success has many friends. And we also say Sensex also has many friends. So you see the amount of demat accounts that we had in December 2002, 38. And the total demat value was 5.5 lakh in crores. Okay, you see where we were around at the time of rally. You can see it is more than doubled. From 38 lakhs, it became about 84 lakhs. And look at the change in value. Look at the wealth creation there. Though the number of accounts have doubled, okay, look at the value of 550 crores becoming 5,600 crores. That's the journey that the market had. And in my view, when you look at it, the best time that people had in the market. And this also took a lot of advantage for the indexes because people started recognizing this as a very, very scientific way of creating wealth and creating money for themselves. So this is something that happened immediately after. So this journey, there's a major rally, as we said in the previous slide, which started in 0304, moved up to, in the year 2008. That cycle of 5-6 years made a lot of millionaires. Okay. Likewise, when you see so many new entrants have come into the market in a period of 4 years, virtually more than doubling the number of demat accounts. Once again, another important point to look at is the credit growth. The year that we are talking about, we all know that we have a credit issue at the moment in the economy, and we have been hearing various news about it. Okay, but compare it to 2003, you will see that in Jan, we were at about 350,000 US million, on the credit exposure. And that rallied up to as high as about close to 900. So we are talking about in a period of about 5 years, in a period of about 5 years, the credit almost tripled. Almost tripled. So that's the kind of exposure that the market had. It was all about, multiplicity as a core way of looking at things. Look at the GDP. Today, when we talk about 5 trillion, it looks unbelievable. But let me tell you, the GDP doubled in that phase. When we went into the market in 2003, the GDP was at 0.6 trillion. In that phase, we are at 1.2 trillion. And today, we are at about 2.8 trillion. So when you look at the journey, a lot of time what happens is when you encounter the facts, we understand, it is very much possible. So I remember at that time, if anybody had to speak about doubling of the GDP, it would have been laughed off as a joke. Much as we may want to discount the 5 trillion story today. But by the time you build up the overall thing, 5 trillion may not be that far away than what it appears when we look at it without the backup of certain data. So, we ask this question, is it a slowdown? Is it a speed breaker? So I generally say, is it a slowdown or is it a slowing down? Because when it's a slowdown, you normally slow down because you want to halt, you want to stop, you want to park somewhere. But if you're on the right side of the road, you normally don't slow down unless you want to take a U-turn. Okay? And we believe that this could perhaps be a U-turn slowdown, slowing down rather. So our philosophy is that this seems to be a slowing down state of affairs, which seem to be on an upswing, perhaps we have taken the first turn towards taking that U-turn. And that will again be backed up by data, because we don't want to come here and tell you what we feel. We want to come here and tell you by what the data speaks for itself. And that data sharing is what we are going to do in the subsequent slides. Is there a sharp recovery expected now? We don't know. Has the revival already started? All of us are guessing. My guess is as good as your guess. But at the end of the session, perhaps we will be a little more informed to take a more validated view of, is it reviving, is it not reviving, or as the case is. And most importantly, is it here to stay? Okay, that's also another question which is haunting every one of our mind. So for anything to get revived, when we are unwell, we are in an ICU, there has to be certain medications that come in, right? There have to be some level of immunity that your body has to sustain. There has to be certain level of, activities that has to be done to get you back to where you are and get you back to running. So we identified what are the key enablers that will take us there. Despite all the news that we are hearing, it's human to first get sensitized on negative data, right? And only it gets debated because negativity is always more contagious. And when you look at the data of passenger vehicles, okay, you look at, the number of air passenger increase, you look at those broad points, you will probably want to feel that, look, isse bura kya hoga? What could be more worse than what we have gone through in the last few years, despite the great demographics that this country and the overall global economy talks about India. So when everyone is talking about India with so much of scrutiny and analysis, I presume there would be strong reasons for them to relook at India with the intensity and the myopic view that they keep looking at as always. You look at the increase in FPI and FDI inflows. Okay, let me go to the next slide. We have just detailed it for you. Okay, our net FDI inflow in FY19 was at 21.2 billion. Now, we can cry till cows come home by saying that, look, there is a challenge in the economy. It may be true. Okay. However, the FDI inflows, these are long-term folks who are coming into India in a FDI format that has increased to 24. We're talking about a 20% increase in FDI in a market that you and me and every one of us feel that we are in a recessionary phase. To the extent somebody saying, is it a phase of depression? We don't know. But this is it. FDIs have come in. FY20, April to November data is 20% higher than the previous year, same time. You look at the net FPI, from 9.7, it's moved to 12.6, a 30% increase. 25 to 30% increase on the net FPI. What does it indicate? It indicates the confidence that the global markets has in a market like India. Why should we as Indians not be as confident or more confident than the folks who are putting in the money into India? Right? So that's something which is a food for thought for all of us as the investor fraternity. The positive growth index, you look at IIP, negative, obviously there have been reasons for it, okay, and it started turning positive. Now with what's happening, the unfortunate things that's happening in some of the other parts of the world, okay, and a lot of diversion of, manufacturing activities, this is probably expected to even rise further and rise substantially. Look at the PMI index. So every data that you look at, GST, obviously there have been flaws in the implementation, and it may take a while to get that corrected, but things are improving. It's probably not as bad as what we hear on a daily basis, and we have to be mindful about the fact that if these positive facts, which I don't think is largely represented in the normal consumption of data that we have on a daily basis, So if you look at that, you will see that there is a reason for us to at least smile, if not laugh. So, what are the structural enablers? When we spoke about the previous one, here we are seeing what has happened. This is historic data. This is historic. But through the budget and even otherwise, there have been certain structural reforms that have taken place. There is a disinvestment target being set, and not a small one. We are talking about 2.1 lakh crore of disinvestment to be done. This is going to open up the market in a very big way. Banking reforms. IBC, when it was formed, sabko laga isme kya hoga? Okay, but look at the data. Look at the amount of money being recovered through this one policy, structural policy reform that was done. Look at the amount of money that has come in. You look at the infrastructure development, 1.3 lakh crore over the next 5 years. Corporate tax cuts, which obviously happened about 6-7 months back. Maybe it happened before the budget, it did not get as much shine as it was required. But the fact is that when it moves from 35 to 25, your earnings will increase, your net payouts increase, and there's going to be more money for everyone. This is something which, today the banking stocks have tanked. Banking industry has been joked about. Obviously, there have been largely corporate governance challenges, especially in the unorganized sector of banking. If you look at the overall picture, at least we need to give marks for the fact that some level of hard pressures have been put to take the banking industry to clean up their balance sheets. It's not easy. It's a very, very bold move. And after initiating the cleanup exercise, to recapitalize the banks by 70,000 crores, that's not a small amount of money. It just talks about, the way I look at it is, it talks about the immense faith that the industry, the government, and we all have in the banking industry as a whole. In the banking industry as a whole, where 70,000 crores have been a recapitalization and rising GST collection. GST is only increasing by the month, with the exception of 1 month where there was a blip, and which was widely reported. You would see that GST is on the rise, and it's here to stay. Whether we like it or not like it, we have to pay GST. You look at what has happened now. These days, when you go to the market, there's no black, white, and stuff like that. When you go to buy a real estate, if at all anyone goes to buy in the first place. But, your ready reckoner and your market prices are all the same. It's all happening because of certain changes which are structural in nature. It is not that मैंने ऐसा किया, आपने ऐसा किया. It is about the fact that सबको ऐसे ही करना है. So there is one method, one way of working, and that working methods have to be leveraged in terms of the wealth creation journey in future. So when you look at India, India is not about just what we spoke. It's not only about money. And I say this, which is not covered in the presentation. Today when you look at India, one of the most things that we may not regard very, we are one of the most peaceful countries, notwithstanding some of the roads being blocked. So look at what's happening between China and Hong Kong. You look at what's happening between China and US. Look at Africa as a continent. You look at areas where there are so many geopolitical challenges. If you look at India, people also factor in us as a very, very important safe place to do business and clean place to do business. And that's one of the strengths that we certainly possess. The other important aspect is we are talking about 18% of the overall population who lives in India. Do you know, it's like saying that, look, I am selling a product and 18% of the market share is with me. I mean, do you understand what it means? And if you're a consumption-driven market, do you understand 18% of everything being sold in the country, in the world, is going to be your consumption? So why not an Indian product? Or why not a global product coming at the terms that we can afford? So 18%, boss, you all have to do something very big to get this messed up. 18% is a very, very high number. And the most advanced economies don't talk about this kind of percentage of share in the market. Second largest English-speaking population. Rightly, wrongly, English as a language has a serious impact on the way economies function, right? And when we are talking about, and when more and more countries are adopting English as the common medium, this will give India a major advantage. And we are talking about it quadrupling in the times to come. Look at the workforce, 116 million, and at the moment there are about 467 million who are working. So on the workforce, you're talking about 25% market share. You know what it means? You will have the strength to arm twist the wage bill. So today, once upon a time, we went with folded hands for employment. You may be, because of the skilling, because of the enhanced education levels, because of the enhanced aspirational level, and also the new millennial generation that we see, who are very, very ambitious and clear on what they want to do. I met a young boy just behind sitting there, amazing clarity on what he wants to do. So these are attributes which we cannot discount as a factor which are going to propel our economy to a very different level. Aaj shayad itna clearly dikhe na. But these are definitely aspects that the global economy is looking at in India. So we are talking about, in the next 5 to 6 years, being about 116 million people who are working. The other important aspect is the median age. This wonderful thing about this 30s, the early 30s are the time when you are the most matured. Bekoof bhi nahi ho, and you're matured, and you are exposed, you are aspirational, you are educated, you have ambitions because you have perhaps just gone the family way. So there's something very unique about this early 30s. And this early 30s, if India's large population is going to have a median age of 32, currently I think we are at about 27 or 28, okay, that is going to add to the maturity of the workforce that we are talking about, right? And that in itself will be a major propeller to our growth story. And on the economic side, what's happening is, I mean, I've said this in the past if anybody has attended. Today, the house helps who come to our house to assist us, they also come in a scooty. They no more come in, and you should see some of them, they come so well dressed up, decked up, and they are, and I'm not saying it's happening in all the houses or all the areas, but I'm saying that segment is also getting aspirational, and that's about the new India. That's about a farmer's son not wanting to be a farmer is also about a new India. So the aspiration level is very high, and we're talking about 140 million people being added into the middle income category. Chief, this is where paisa, when we are in the stock market, out there to create wealth, who ultimately contributes is the middle income category. They are the ones who are going to drive this consumption story, and we're talking about 140 million people being added there. And from the middle income, about 21 million going up into the high income category, which basically means in the language you call it the aspire good category. So the luxury cars, the luxury watches, the luxury suitings, whatever those luxury attributes are, they're all going to be 21 million more people to buy. Kharidenge, right? There will be money on one side. So these are the positive sides to look at, of the story of India. Likewise, you look at the household income. It has also got to do with the fact that, when the middle class gets strengthened, the spending ability increases because the income ability, you look at what you were paying someone, if you're into entrepreneurship, what you were paying someone once upon a time and what are the same wages today. It is not only, it's a demand supply issue. So if you don't give that kind of money, you don't get that kind of good people. So there is a household saving increase because people have started looking at, as saving, because the Indian saving story also has been very, very widely reported. Now that at one point in time also impacted the consumption because people believe more in saving than in consuming. But we are at that cusp when you will see a set of, it's like the father is also earning and the son is also earning. So when both of them are earning, one will drive the consumption because he believes a little more in spending, and the earlier generation who's also acting and earning currently, they are in that sense saving. So you maintain a balance between consumption and saving, spending and saving, if I may say so. Look at the digital. Now this is something which, if you were to ask me, this is going to be a big thing for us in the coming decade. Okay? Why? The nationwide internet penetration in 2010 was at about 8%, and that moved to about 25% in 2016. Today, the cell phone story is known to everyone. The cell phone story in the early 2000s and what it did to our lives, I need not say, everyone knows what it has done to our lives. And internet penetration is going to be even more impactful, even more, if I may say, monetizable than what happened in the telecom story. Okay? And it is likely to grow by 55% by 2025. So you're just talking, by the time you say Jack Robinson, it will be another 4 years. 5 saal nikal jayenge. Okay? And you will be at 55% of internet penetration. And that will, they generally say the future of retail is e-tail. So if retail is going to be largely e-tail, you will see the compositions changing. Today, maybe 10% of the overall buy is on a e-model, on a e-tail model. Okay? And 90% is on a retail model. But you will see the complete thing changing, it trickling down from metros to, through the neo metros and then going to the gaons and villages. So you will see that. And digital transformation is a major impetus that we as an economy, we as a country, we as a society going to adopt. So today, if my mother can easily transact on a portal, I think the age of digital transformation has already started. And this is where we believe a major growth orientation will come in for all of us. You look at the last part, the digital influence spending is currently at about 45 billion US, and it's projected to increase tenfold. Do you understand what it means for stocks which are going to be in the e-tail space? Because ultimately, when the market grows into a much larger ecosystem, organization and entities which are been in that space, so हमको कभी-कभी लगता है, we sit back and say, okay, this company is so big, but they are making huge losses. Why is their valuation so high? On the private space, unlisted space I'm talking about. And we also have thought about it. यार ये कैसे food delivery business, when people started off, we thought यार ये क्या बेवकूफ़ी है? Why would somebody, why will we, pay them 21% or 25% and get my food delivered? But today you look at it, every restaurant has a food delivery arm attached to it. And the moment you talk about some food delivery companies, there are only 3 names that comes to your mind, isn't it? And just imagine if the 3 space is going to largely cater to 100% of the market, what kind of opportunities lie in that space? And companies which have got that kind of valuation perhaps are justified. So at least that's been a learning for me, because food delivery is some segment that we never looked at. We thought it'll never work, but it did work. So digital influence spend is out here to stay, and it'll account for 30 to 35% of the overall sales by 2025. So this market is technically we are talking about tripling or getting it to about 4 to 5 times than what it is currently. So digital will be a big shot in the arm for us. So why the market's touching new high? As you see, as Manish said in his presentation, the last few months have been good. This probably, as I said, this slowing down is for taking the first 2 steps towards the U-turn. Okay. So look at the FPI, 54,000 crores rupees in the year 2020. Look at the domestic inflows of financial products coming in. These are all, this presentation will be sent to you, so you all can feel free to make notes, but this will come to you. Look at the NPS, ULIPs and EPFs. Where are the money getting invested? That's all in the equity space, because anybody, and I should say this for myself, I should say this for, my dear friends and colleagues, we all believe in the story of India. And what we are saying is what we are doing, because we believe in this, and consequently we believe that the overall entrepreneurial ecosystem in the country is out here to get more and more and more bigger. Now, the Demat account, look at from 39.3 million in 2019, it was 34.8 in 2018. Now, much as we may say that, look, market's kharab hai, okay, we have made losses, or we have not made as much money, depending on what time you have entered the market, okay. The fact of the matter remains that new entrants have come into this market. And one thing that we are very excited about, because we keep doing this analysis out of our 10,000 clients and out of the 25,000 odd inquiries that we get, one thing that we are seeing as a very, very good opportunity for the country is, because we have data analytics in which we try and spruce out the nature of the client, what we see is the young generation, okay, their belief in real estate is almost like this. They believe in gold because they don't like probably the color, so they don't believe in gold, but equities, and we see out of every month we add a few hundred new subscribers and new investors into our list, and we see sizable amount of them are in this space of 30, 35, 38, the young generation, who believes in equity as a space, and that we call it as a finalization of savings. Financialization of the savings. Because earlier, what would you do? Keep it as cash. What would you do? Keep it as you would buy gold. Or what would you do? Equities were never looked at that. But the fact that, you can see even in a bad market, isse bura to kuch tha nahi. Even in a bad space, you look at the markets the Demat accounts have increased by 13%. That's not small. It is a small silence before the storm, because you will see more and more people coming in now as well, because one comes in, he recommends his friend, and that, references keep going. This is a representation of, you see, from December 10, okay, you see how it has been increasing. The orange are the new accounts coming in, Demat accounts, which basically means the belief in the equity space is increasing day by day. So for the ones who have been this for a while, congratulations to you for being an early investor, and congratulations to you for being so intelligent, okay? But for the ones who have recently joined, again, congratulations, because you've realized that this is the space that you should be belonging to. And In that sense, we believe this trend, when you look at in the forward years, is going to continue. As a matter of fact, I should also say that, the B schools have now started getting into virtual trading, and from virtual trading, they've started getting into real trading, where they tell them, understand the markets. It's a part of their curriculum. So it's also education in some sense, telling them, how to enhance your knowledge in that space. The other important aspect, and this is something that Manish will talk in detail in the subsequent presentation. एक चीज अगर आप गौर करोगे, every wave that we had, we are at the moment on this, because that's the wave that took up, we are on this wave, okay? That's the wave that took us from 2003 to 2008. You look at what telecom did. Telecom story was very big. The realty story was very big, okay? Automobiles, infrastructure. So Sara, those were the sectors which contributed to the growth of the market. Now, if you look at the market has further grown even in the next decade from that time. But the constitution of that changed. So it was no more, and I'm not saying those companies didn't do well subsequently, but I'm saying that the larger constitution of growth enablers and growth augmenters came in from different services. Healthcare was never in the growth story of 1 to 7, but that became a big story in 7 to 12. Okay, likewise, financial services, private banks, the NBFCs, so to speak, automobiles, construction materials, financial services, NBFC, and all of this put together had a major contribution to the overall pat of Nifty. So what it meant is, the point I'm trying to drive home is that this is not a straight road. This is a road which has a lot of turns and bends, and so it is natural for you and natural for all of us to be slowing down to adjust to the turn. And the smarter one is the one who does not drive straight, because this doesn't work in a linear fashion. It is important for you to understand what took you there will not take you there. What took you until here is not going to take you there. So the smarter investor and the smarter investor advising company are the ones who identifies what are the next constitution of the sectorial growth over the next 1 decade. And we at Research and Ranking over the last 6 to 8 months have been working on it with a very, very microscopic eye, saying that, look, this is good. But if we go with this historic view to our future, is it going to help us? In our view, probably it may give you reasonably good returns, because these stories are all intact. Today also you see most of these companies, with the exception of automobiles, having some challenges which we believe are temporary in nature. So what is the point? The point is, from 2012 to 19, we saw these stocks contributing to the overall growth of the setup. What will be the journey from 20 to 25 or 20 to 2030? So these are what we call as the sunrise sectors. Typically, as they say, the earlier you get, the better you are. So if there is a responsibility towards us as a company who's advising you in your creation of wealth, in your journey of wealth creation, and there is a responsibility towards you to look at it with a microscopic eye too. Because if you take a traditional approach and go to the market by saying, I'm expecting an XYZ return, okay, in our humble view, the kind of offshoot that you got from 2003 to 2008, the constitution was very different from what it was in the previous decade. And likewise, we believe that 2025 and 20 to 2030, that 10-year, 1 decade, the constitution of the sectors who will contribute to the growth, okay, will be different. And generally, if you've seen, the new age sectors, jahan pe logon ko zyada nahi pata hai, so a lot of new sectors come in, a lot of, good companies come in, some bad companies also come in. So all of this is going to be, so there's a responsibility towards us to identify them. There is a responsibility for you to understand them, okay, and take a judicious call on what composition would you like to keep on the new sectors. So, this is an important component of our thing, What has happened is, there are some countries in which the GDP and the stock prices are not interlinked to each other, but which is not the case in India. If you look at India in a historic view, you would see that the GDP and the index value are generally following each other, so GDP up, markets up, okay. We have had some quarters where the inverse of it has happened, but that when you look at an overall long-term view, you would generally see that the two has been tangoing together, so when in 2013, when the GDP was 1.8, okay, you would see the Nifty was at about 5,700. And likewise, when you look at now, today we are at 2.8, 2.7 trillion economy. you would see that the Nifty is at about 10,200. You would generally not see a inverse model, wherever the Nifty is, where the GDP is down and the Nifty is up and vice versa. So here, for us, we believe that, we believe that this 5 trillion story is out here to play. Ab 4.8 trillion hoga ya 5.2 trillion hoga is a matter of, it can't be to the last round number. But that vision and that possibility for India to grow is very much there because of the factors that we spoke in the previous slides. And if that rate has to continue through the FPI, the FIIs, and the overall investments coming into the country and the infrastructure play and the consumption story, you would see that this may not be as daunting as it appears today. Like in 2003, when one spoke about doubling the economy, they may have not put numbers to it, but they said that, look, this market will grow by so much amount. It did not seem very, very surreal, right? Today, we believe that this is out here to play. So, if this is going to be the story for us, what is important for us as an organization, as I said a while back, what is important for us as an organization is to understand that we have a responsibility towards identifying. So a massive research exercise under the leadership of Jaspreet. Jaspreet is here? Yeah, so Jaspreet, who's our CIO, exceptionally senior and well-read person who, along with Manish, designs the strategy. So we have been working on it and we have come up with certain answers for this. At least we have identified those areas where we feel wealth creation is going to be a big thing. From our standpoint, our suggestion, advice, and request to all of you all would be to get an element of innovation in the way you look at the markets. You can go back and question any of the data points. They are all there. They are true because it's come from the government indexes which don't lie, right? So if these parameters are true, aap bhi apna common sense, logic, and other parameters you can apply on it and see if this is true, then how can a country like India, with 18% overall global population, with 1.3 trillion amount of money being spent on infrastructure, okay, with 1.4 million people getting added to the middle class, with 20 million people getting into higher middle class, and so much of new inventions coming in. There are new industries. For example, let's look at research and ranking. Today, I remember in 2016 when Manish drew up the idea of research and ranking, it was just a small white paper and a whiteboard. To a company today, where we have 10,000 investors, a team of about 198 to almost 200 people, 3 offices all over India, very, very well-learned people like all of you all as a part of our ecosystem. Just imagine fintech. Where has it gone from when? 3 years back, probably you would not have thought yourself that, look, I'll be getting into a fintech-based advisory model. So these things are the advantages, the changes at a much, much faster and speedier pace at the moment. And it is important for all of you all to look deeper. At least that's what we are doing. Look deeper into the method of your investment, to the choice, and perhaps if you are exceptionally technically competent, choose yourself. But otherwise, don't tinker with the compositions, because that's something when we did our analysis, we understand that, from the list, people take up what suits. And there is a further level of knowledge, which is good, so long as one can, sustain it. But there's a general propensity for one to fall into a trap, because, you do it once, it succeeds, then you do it 5 more times, out of which 4 times fails. So, thoda problem ho sakta hai. So, this is what I had to present. The larger thing being, we believe at Research and Ranking that 2003 seems to be where we are. Rewind 17 years, we seem to be in the 2003 phase. Internally, we are believing that there is going to be a major bull run, and that's why you see the bulls locking horns here. We feel that the bulls are back. We feel that there is a responsibility for us to encash, because we have been in this market for some time thinking about the long-term story. And long-term story, these are the ghats that we are going to maneuver and reach there. So with this, I end my brief. I wish you all the best in this journey of wealth creation. We as Research and Ranking will stay committed to you in this journey. We'll continue to do what we are doing. There will be good times, there will be bad times, but we will be what we are, transparent and coming to you with backup of data of what we see and communicating very dispassionately of what we feel this market would be in the times to come. We believe strongly that this country is out here for a major leap, and I feel there is a fundamental responsibility for all of us to encash on this, given the fact that we all have been attached to the long-term growth story. I remember when Research and Ranking and Equintis started off, long-term story was not what people spoke about. There, if you were a good trader, you were considered to be good. And when we started off long-term, a lot of people discounted the views initially. But today, I think that awareness is coming into everyone. That long-term story is the way to go. Patience is the way to go. Confidence is the way to go. And we must say this, we are not blinded. We go back and we revisit the data at all point in times. And we want to recalibrate if there is a change and come back to you with dispassionately what we feel is the truth as it emerges from scientific analysis of data. So with this, I wish you all the best. God bless with wonderful decade, and hopefully in 2030 when we meet again, at that time, we are all sitting in multiples which are, exceptionally good for us to look back and cherish. I hope this session is of use to you, and look forward to be, taking up any questions, in the times to come. Thank you very much.